begin with like the icebreaker. What was your drink? What did you make? And how does it relate to the book? You know. So I guess I'll start. I call this the Outlander's Respite, and I like to think it's what the Alton Ordu would drink in Norylska, and I feel like I'm pronouncing that wrong, but basically it's like a vodka with orange juice, so a screwdriver, you know. So a little bit of Norylska, a little bit of the homeland, you know. It's what they would, a little taste of home, but also you can't really get much more besides, what is it, brandy and vodka and more vodka. So yeah, that's what I got. So a little screwdriver. So yeah, nice. Whoever wants to go next.
Cheers. I guess I'm drinking a whiskey, Jameson. It actually has nothing to do with Norylska or Norylska Groans, except for the fact that I was half lit on this the entire time we wrote it.
Well, there you go.
That counts.
It definitely does. Yeah.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Yeah, same story. Whiskey on ice.
Yeah, no, I read one of your interviews, and you mentioned how you're basically fueled by that throughout the writing process. So I gotta say, I love the world building. There's so much like dimension and depth, like your references to like philosophers and playwrights and stuff. It really shows that you guys put a lot of attention, and that brings me back to the Alton Ordu thing, feuds and stuff like that. So yeah, it just brings to mind Daniel Polanski especially. And I remember I read one of your interviews, Clayton, and you mentioned Polanski was a big influence, and I can tell, especially with the medallion, the magic system, which from what I read is more of a Fletcher. That's more of your expertise.
Yeah, I think the magic system actually weirdly came out of some cyberpunk short stories I wrote like back in the 90s.
Huh.
And I was sort of, I've been playing around with the idea of trying to move that into a fantasy setting. And I'd done a bunch of sort of like work on the background magic system stuff, but the idea of like actually writing an entire book was daunting.
Mm-hmm.
And, I just read Clayton's Obsidian Psalm. Mostly the only reason I read it was because I was releasing the Obsidian Path at like exactly the same time. And I was like, oh, the fucker, what's going on? And I read it, and it was completely fucking mental.
Right.
And so I was like, yeah, okay, this is totally the guy to like do a co-write with.
Nice.
And, basically shot him an email and was like, dude, I have a really terrible idea. You should probably be the voice of wisdom here and say, no, I don't want to do this. And he completely let me down and was like, yeah, okay, fuck it, let's do it.
Yeah, I've never been the voice of wisdom in anything. So.
No.
You're considering having more than 2 point of view characters, or would that just be overwhelming?
Clayton, you wanna front this one?
Yeah, I think maybe we had talked about it at one point, but we had decided that it was easier. Well, easier. It was. It made more sense to keep the novel tight, to keep the point of view tight, to keep everything very close and claustrophobic, and kind of give that feeling of this is a rough life for these people, and we wanted to keep it within those confines.
Yeah, and it's always like it gets very complicated at throwing in more point of view characters. Like you wind up like George R.R. Martin, where you double the point of view characters every book. Like what was it, 20 to 40 between like a single book? It's ridiculous. So I can understand how, yeah, it gets very complicated, definitely.
Yeah, we very much went into this. We talked before we started writing. We talked a lot about sort of theme and flavor and setting. And we very much wanted this sort of like claustrophobic, early industrial, nasty, and I think part of achieving that claustrophobic feeling is really just being deep in the heads of only 2 people.
That's a solid point, definitely.
And just digging into those 2.
And yeah, I think. Sorry, go ahead.
I think it lent itself to the magic system as well, to the stones, because we could really kind of dig into the psychology of the characters and the way those stones affected just 1 or 2 people versus an entire cast. Yeah. It made it just that much more intense for us.
Or the gang wars in general, they kind of brought to mind Peter McLean. I feel like fans of Peter McLean, you would love this book. I'm not gonna deny that. It's fantastic for those kinds of writers.
Yeah, Peter's stuff is amazing. I mean, for sure. I don't. Certainly for myself, I can't speak for Clayton, but like, Priest of Bones and stuff, like that flavor was definitely kind of lurking around in the back of my head.
Yeah, pretty much the same. I mean, as soon as those books came out, I devoured them, and I'm still waiting on the next one. So it's definitely something that's been circulating, and like you had mentioned, Polanski's Lowdown, that kind of cross between early industrial, noir, all that is just the flavor I think we both kind of wanted to aim at. So
what came first, like the Russian inspired culture or the time period?
They were kind of part and parcel, because we bounced, I think, if I remember correctly, initially we were sort of torn between like slightly later communist Russia and then earlier Tsarist Russia. And just because of the tech level, I think we settled on like 1910 as this random year to kind of half-ass base things on.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it rings a lot of Joe Abercrombie, but a little bit later. But his newest stuff is very industrial, and I feel like fantasy is kind of gearing more toward that. So I think you guys are ahead of the curve. So yeah, viewers, I recommend like getting the audiobook for these for anything from Fletcher, honestly, because he puts a lot of effort into the storytelling for those, and I know that like that's like a hobby for you almost, right? Not a hobby. I don't want to denigrate it, but
no, it's totally what it is. That's for sure how it started. Was like a recording setup, and when I realized I could do my own audiobooks, I was like, oh fuck yeah, it'll be easy. I'll just it's so not easy.
Really isn't. Like
no, there's a skill to voice acting and emotion and stuff, which I'm still working on.
Would you guys is the audiobook out, or have you been working on an audiobook for this? For Norylska Groans?
Not yet. Right now we're sort of shopping it. There's some industry interest, and we're kind of waiting to hear back on what happens there. It'll likely be another month or so before we hear.
Okay.
So hopefully it sells, and then it's party time.
Yeah, hell yeah. So you make it like. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, if it doesn't sell, then we'll probably look at doing it ourselves.
Yeah, are you guys thinking about doing like shorter works? Like if I was gonna like co-write with someone, I would have wanted to start with a shorter work, but you guys are very ambitious. So are you guys considering working further in the Norylska Groans universe, or dot?
I think yeah, there will be more work down the road. As far as shorter, I doubt that. Might be able to save more on it. I hadn't really planned any short stories myself, but
yeah, I mean short. I don't really. Short stories are difficult. They're like a lot of work for a short story.
Yeah.
I find novels easier. I'd much rather write a novel than a short story. We are playing around. It's early days. We're actually sort of messing around with another book with a third writer coming on board to write another point of view. Krystle Matar, she wrote the Legacy of the Brightwash.
Okay.
Which is
I'll remember to link her name.
Insanely good. Yeah, that book is insanely good, and both Clayton and I read that. And so when we were talking about like, hey, let's do another book, and we were kind of like, should we like maybe try and sort of rope another writer in? So like, if maybe we can get somebody to write a third of it, it's less for us to do, right? It's genius. And so we approached Krystle because we both loved Brightwash, and she was foolish enough to sort of be interested. So it's early days. We're still bouncing ideas and sort of plotting stuff out, see how it goes. But we got a very cool little idea. Completely, it still takes place in Norylska, but this will be a sort of very different and I suspect much darker story.
Nice.
Yeah,
I mean, like, sorry, go ahead.
It does look promising. The early notes are pretty exciting. So
I'm excited.
A lot of research, especially because I mean, at least for myself, like I don't know anything about Tsarist Russia, so it was constantly you'd write a bit, you'd stop, you'd sort of start researching industrial levels, slang, you know, Russian stuff,
Mafia
philosophy.
structure.
Yeah, that's right. Clayton came back with pages and pages of notes on the mafia structure and what everyone was called, and we're like, oh fuck, that is cool. So like all the terms used throughout the book are the sort of actual correct terms, and everyone sort of got their own rank and everything. Yeah,
Right.
you always want your background and secondary characters to be real, right?
Yeah.
And I often find I like my background characters more than I like my main characters. I don't know. Maybe it's because there's less stress, you know, so I'm less worried about them being whatever they need to be for the story. And Max was a perfect example. Like, fuck, I love that character.
Yeah.
Max was even one of my favorites, and I had the you know I had the same problem where I was writing Arcadian. I knew when I started writing him, if I don't rein this guy in, he's gonna run away with things. That's just, you know, you can feel it in the character sometimes.
Yeah.
So,
You know, it's